What is a sand dune? I have a question.
What do you think?
Like divot in the ground, kind of, or just hills of sand.
Hills of sand. Say a little more.
Every year, this
By wind. They're built by wind.
As an outdoor educator, lack of access to a formal classroom can at times be a challenge when trying to connect with new groups of students on a weekly basis. However, the benefit that can be pulled from having students in spaces where they are free to directly interact with, experience, and experiment with the world around them more than makes up for the short amount of time we have together. My name is Olivia Vincent, and as someone who has been teaching out in the field for close to a decade, I have seen my fair share of unique learning environments. For this particular project, the ability to live, work, and explore Cape Cod provided the perfect backdrop for supplementing students' understanding of erosion, weathering, and at a larger scale, how humans interface with their environment. After reading through articles in the National Geographic Erosion Resource Library, it became clear that this topic was the perfect stepping stone to allow students to develop their attitudes, test their skills, and bolster their knowledge of our changing planet. By experimenting with the flow of water through sand, students were encouraged to observe, hypothesize, and test their models in order to more fully connect facts they learned in the classroom with tangible, self-developed results. Initial exploration was largely guided by the learner's own curiosity and a sense of empowerment that comes from allowing students the freedom of trial and error while also making observations that will be utilized later on in the lesson. This initial exploration also set the stage for the importance of collaboration and communication as students began brainstorming in small groups to create streams that they believed would have the most interesting final results.
Do you guys have hypotheses? What do you think is going to happen? Do you think it's going to cut these little curves, or do you think it's going to keep the curves?
I think it's going to cut them after a little bit.
Why?
Because they're really sharp.
As the students developed and changed their models, we were able to discuss the similarities and differences between landforms they're already familiar with, whether that be as simple as a local sledding hill or as distant as the Nile River Delta. Due to the ever-present relationship between land, water, and people, the intuitive connections being made on the local, regional, and global scales were already inherent in how participants related to the activity. This familiarity allows for both deeper and broader discussions of the perspectives with which we utilize this information. To add a bit more direction to this activity, students were presented a series of problems and challenges. Our first puzzle began with each student being given a red and a green bead, intended to represent houses and other types of potential developments. For their individual challenge, learners were asked to imagine the sandy hillside as a potential for real estate opportunities. They were to place green beads in locations where houses would be safe from erosion, and red beads in the danger zone. By starting the challenge in this way, the class began to add additional perspectives to the geological and ecological perspectives that had already been built upon. After providing observation-based evidence as to why students selected particular areas for their houses, it was easy to shift the conversation towards economic and cultural considerations, especially with regards to areas most vulnerable to the effects of climate change, such as sea level rise and increased rainfall.
How is that gonna protect it?
So it can't break.
Yeah, because the line has to go up it, over it.
Nice.
You have to make it really, the straws together so it doesn't.
For their second challenge, students were called upon to design an erosion mitigation system. By combining their earlier observations in order to collaboratively problem solve, this final task relied on the utilization of all 4 skills highlighted in the learning framework. After their designs were tested and the results of the experiment analyzed, students were also asked to retain as many observations as possible about what they saw, experienced, and built during this lesson in preparation for comparing and contrasting with observations during our off-site trip to the beach. As an educator without a classroom or permanent group of students, assessing impact has less to do with acquisition of specific knowledge and everything to do with the acquisition of tools with which to attain that knowledge. By using Cape Cod as a case study, the interactions between tourists, locals, year-round flora and fauna, invasive species, and migratory animals meld together to create a picture of an increasingly dynamic corner of the world. When examining the knowledge concepts of the National Geographic Learning Framework, the human journey, our changing planet, and wildlife in wild places, it is clear that Cape Cod lies at the fragile interface of all three. Identifying and understanding these relationships is truly the cornerstone of what outdoor education strives to foster. Though this trip marked the end of our time together, there was already evidence of students beginning to use their explorer mindset to process the world around them. With each new group of students comes their own personal experience, and as an educator, it is a privilege to continually be provided with new ways in which to contextualize experiences we share. It is my hope that with each new opportunity to learn, students that have been provided with engaging, hands-on, self-directed activities will continue to develop a more complete, compassionate, and connected view of their environment, as well as their place within it. Amongst the chatter on the bus ride back, catching snippets of conversation has continued to inspire hope that these perspectives will continue to persist far into the future.